My name is Evelyn. I'm 29 years old, and when I tell people that I became a widow before turning 30, they look at me with quiet pity. They never know what to say. I used to smile and tell them I was fine, but deep inside, I was far from fine. My husband, Michael, was my whole world. We had been married for only 4 years before the accident took him away. I still remember that rainy night, the phone call, the trembling hands, the hospital lights, and the sound of the doctor saying, "We did everything we could." My heart broke that night. It was as if the world stopped moving. For weeks, I lived in silence. The walls of our house felt cold. The scent of Michael's perfume still hung in the air, and every time I closed my eyes, I could see him smiling at me. I stopped cooking. I stopped going to work. I barely spoke to anyone. My mother tried to help me, but she had her own life. She had remarried years ago, and my stepfather, Dave, often called to check on me. I had always respected him. He was kind, calm, and thoughtful. He never tried to take the place of my real father but always treated me like his own daughter. One evening, he came by to visit. I was sitting on the porch, staring into the dark, lost in my thoughts. He parked his car and walked toward me slowly, holding a small paper bag. "Evelyn," he said softly, "I brought you some soup. Your mom said you haven't been eating much." I tried to smile. "Thank you, Dave." He looked at me carefully. "You've lost weight. You need to take care of yourself." I shrugged. "It's hard. Everything reminds me of him." He sighed and sat beside me. For a long moment, we said nothing. The night air was still. I could hear crickets in the distance and the faint rustle of the wind through the trees. "Grief doesn't go away overnight," he said finally. "But it changes. One day, it won't hurt this much." I turned to look at him. His eyes were kind, and there was genuine concern in them. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone understood. That night, after he left, I cried again, not because I felt lonely, but because someone had reminded me that I was still human, that I could still be cared for. From that day, Dave began visiting more often. Sometimes he would bring food, sometimes just a book or flowers from his garden. He never stayed long, but his presence always brought warmth to the house. Slowly, I began to smile again. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself looking forward to Dave's visits. It felt strange at first, this quiet excitement, this small spark of joy whenever I heard his car pulling into the driveway. He was 51, tall, with gentle eyes and a calm voice. There was something comforting about him. He had this way of listening, of truly hearing every word I said. When he spoke, his words carried peace. One afternoon, he came while I was gardening. The sun was soft and golden, and I had dirt on my hands. "You're smiling," he said, standing at the gate. "That's a good sign." I laughed a little. "I'm trying. It feels strange to smile again." "Strange, but good," he replied. We sat outside for hours, talking about life, about loss, about how unfair it sometimes feels. I told him how lonely the nights were, how I kept wishing I could talk to someone who wouldn't judge me for still crying. He nodded slowly. "You don't have to pretend to be strong all the time. Sometimes being weak is how we heal." Those words stayed with me for days. Soon, his visits became part of my healing. He helped me fix things around the house, shared stories about my mother's younger days, and encouraged me to go back to work. There was nothing wrong with it. At least, that's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew something was changing, quietly, slowly, and in ways I couldn't explain. It was a Saturday evening. The sky was turning orange, and I was baking bread for the first time in months when Dave called. "Evelyn," he said, his voice softer than usual, "can I come over? I need your help with something." "Of course," I replied without thinking. He arrived 20 minutes later. There was something different about him. He looked tired, a bit pale. "Are you okay?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Just a little muscle pain. I helped a neighbor move some furniture this morning, and I think I pulled something in my back." I frowned. "You shouldn't be lifting heavy things at your age, Dave." He chuckled. "I guess I was trying to prove I still could." He winced slightly as he tried to sit down. I quickly went to get some ointment. "Here," I said. Let me help you with that. He hesitated for a moment. You don't have to. I insist, I interrupted. I helped him apply the ointment gently, and as I did, he sighed with relief. Thank you, Evelyn. You always know how to make things better. I smiled faintly. I just like helping people. He looked at me, his eyes soft but unreadable. That's one of the things I admire about you. Something inside me stirred, something warm and confusing. Our eyes met for a moment too long, and I quickly looked away. My heart began to race. That evening changed something between us. It was as if the air had become heavier, charged with something neither of us could name. After that evening, something subtle but real changed between Dave and me. We didn't talk about it, but it was there like a quiet note playing in the background of every conversation. When he called, my voice always softened. When he visited, I made sure the house looked neat, and I even started wearing perfume again, though I told myself it was just out of habit. He began to stay a little longer during his visits. Sometimes we talked about life, sometimes about my late husband, and sometimes about dreams, his dreams, my dreams, the ones that had faded and the ones that were coming back. There were nights when I felt guilty. I would sit in bed, hugging Michael's old shirt, asking myself if it was wrong to feel something again. I loved Michael deeply, but he was gone. And Dave was alive, kind, and here. One evening, rain began to fall just as Dave was about to leave. You should stay until it stops, I said. He hesitated but agreed. We sat in the living room, the sound of rain filling the silence. Do you ever think about how life surprises us? He asked softly. All the time, I replied. Sometimes it gives us pain, sometimes peace. He nodded slowly. And sometimes, it gives us people we never expected to care about. I looked up, my heart skipping a beat. His eyes were calm but full of emotion. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. That night, when the rain stopped, he stood at the door, looked at me for a long moment, and said, "Thank you for being there, Evelyn. You've helped me more than you'll ever know." He left, and I stood there, my heart racing, unsure what was happening inside me. The following weeks were strange. We didn't speak of feelings, but they were there in every glance, every smile, every shared silence. One day, my mother traveled for a seminar, and Dave came by to check on me. I had been painting again, something I hadn't done since Michael died. "That's beautiful," he said, standing behind me. "You have a gift." I turned to him and smiled shyly. "It feels good to create again." He looked around the room at the soft colors, the quiet light, the life slowly returning to me. "You've changed," he said. "You're finding yourself again." I nodded. Maybe grief doesn't take us away forever. Maybe it just hides us for a while. He smiled, and his eyes glistened with something I couldn't name. "You're stronger than you think." Then he reached out and took my hand. It was a gentle touch, warm and steady, not demanding, not rushed. Just presence. In that moment, I didn't see him as my stepfather. I saw him as a man who had been kind to me, patient, caring, and honest. A man who had stood by me when I had nothing left. We stayed like that for a while, saying nothing, but understanding everything. The first time someone saw us together in town, whispers began. People didn't understand. They never do. Some said I was ungrateful to my late husband's memory. Others said Dave was taking advantage of my weakness. The rumors hurt. I cried one night and told him I couldn't take it anymore. "Maybe we should stop seeing each other," I said, tears in my eyes. Dave looked at me for a long time, his voice trembling when he spoke. "Do you really want that, Evelyn?" I shook my head, sobbing. "No. But I don't want people to hate us." He sighed. "The world will always talk, my dear. But love, real love doesn't ask for permission." Those words broke something inside me. They also healed something. I realized then that sometimes, what people see as wrong might simply be misunderstood. We decided to keep things private, not as a secret of shame, but as something sacred between two souls who found each other in pain and healing. Months passed. I began to smile more, laugh more, and dream again. Dave helped me rebuild my small art studio. He would come over in the evenings to sit beside me while I painted. We didn't need to speak much. Our hearts had learned a quiet language of their own. Sometimes, he would bring me coffee and sit beside me for hours. He would tell me about his youth, his mistakes, his regrets, his lessons. I loved listening to him. He was gentle and wise, but also fragile in his own way. One evening, he said, "You know, Evelyn, love isn't about age. It's about timing. Some people meet too early, some too late. But when it's right, it just feels peaceful." And it did. Being around him felt peaceful. We went for walks in the park, cooked dinner together, and spent quiet Sunday mornings talking about books and music. I had found happiness again, not the wild, youthful love I had with Michael, but a mature, calm love, one that grew out of shared loneliness and kindness. When my mother returned from her trip, she sensed something. "Evelyn," she said one evening, "you've been smiling a lot lately. Is there someone new?" I froze. "What makes you think that?" "A mother always knows." I hesitated, then whispered, "It's Dave." Her eyes widened. "Dave?" I nodded, tears welling up. "Please don't be angry. It just happened. We never planned it. He helped me heal, and I." She was silent for a long time. I could hear my heart beating in my ears. "Finally," she said quietly, "I can't say I understand it. But I've seen how broken you were, and I've seen how alive you've become again. If he treats you well and makes you happy, then maybe that's what matters." I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you, Mom." A year later, we moved to a small town near the coast. It was peaceful there, the kind of place where no one asked questions, where love could just exist. Dave and I built a small life together. We cooked breakfast by the sea, watched sunsets hand in hand, and found joy in the smallest things: laughter, silence, presence. I still kept Michael's photo on my desk. Not as a memory of pain, but as a reminder that love never truly dies, it just changes form. Sometimes, I would whisper to his picture, "Thank you for loving me first. You helped me find my way back to love again." And I knew, wherever he was, he would understand. Now, years later, when I look back, I realize what Dave asked of me wasn't strange at all. He asked me to help him heal, just as I needed someone to help me heal. He asked for kindness, for understanding, for another chance at life. And in giving him that, I found myself again. Love came in a form I never expected, at a time I thought I could never love again. That's something I will never forget. Because sometimes, life takes away everything, just to give us something even deeper. And that, to me, is love, quiet, patient, forgiving, and real.